Welcome to everyone. Perhaps we can start with some information about the exam. Those who opt for the final paper, I have already received some abstracts from some students. If some of you have not sent, please send me an abstract to just discuss the title or the subject of your final paper, and do not forget to submit your final paper before 10th June. And for those who choose final exam, there will be one question, essay question, and there will be two small questions relating to lecture series, and look at carefully about the issues on liberalism, democracy, and Muslim politics or Islamic politics. If you have more questions, you can send me by email to ask the modalities of the paper or exam. Okay, I'd like to thanks again to Professor Tariq Modood to come here to Leuven in our chair. He's the founding director of the University of Bristol Research Center for the Study of Ethnicity and Citizenship. He has had over 40 grants and consultancies in UK, US, and many European countries, and he has over 30 co-edited, co-authored or authored books and reports, and have more than 100 articles and chapters in political philosophy, sociology, and public policy. He is the co-founding editor of the international journal Ethnicities. His recent publications include Multiculturalism, a Civic Idea, which is published in 2007, and there is a second publication in this year, 2013. Another book named Still Not Easy Being British, Struggles for a Multicultural Citizenship, published in 2010. And he is co-editor of Secularism, Religion and Multicultural Citizenship, which is published by Cambridge University Press in 2009. Global Migration, Ethnicity and Britishness, which is published by Palgrave in 2011. And the last one, but not the least one, European Multiculturalism, which is published by Edinburgh University Press in 2012. And today we will discuss with him the multiculturalism as a policy, public policy, and as a political thought. He is one of the leading scholars who works on this issue. It was commonly assumed that the public sphere is much more diverse and much more plural in Europe, and multicultural policies have been used to manage this ethnic, religious, and cultural diversity and pluralism in public sphere. At the same time, there are some critics, and there has been a rising doubt about multiculturalism. More recently, its death has been celebrated by some politicians in their political speeches. At this political level of discourses, there is a widespread idea and perception that multiculturalism has failed to integrate the newcomers, the new migrant communities in different European societies. This kind of discourses question the concept of multiculturalism not only as a policy but also as a political thought. And this rhetoric against the multicultural policy in Europe is largely shared not only in the right-wing political parties, but also in some liberal thinkers and in liberal thought. One of the critics of this argument, or one of the critics of the multiculturalism, is that saying that multiculturalism in Europe has evolved negatively or positively from liberal understanding to much more a Republican state model, which emphasizes on the question of state authority. And these liberal settings of ideas are embarking in a revolutionary change, and that promote not liberties, not pluralism, especially for the migrant communities who live in Europe. And this is somehow a critic who turn over or from multicultural policies. Another argument or feature of the multiculturalism is that discourses that they define multiculturalism as a policy which is against integration, which is against social cohesion. And this rhetoric against the multicultural policy used some strategies and define or consider the multiculturalism as a policy which emphasizes on the question of the separation of the communities rather than the mixing. This again, for this argument or for this rhetoric, multiculturalism is seen as a policy which denies the national identity or national citizenships. It does not too much care about the democratic values. And Tariq Modood see this argument or this criticism as a strategy which is much more shared in the, especially in the public opinion in the media recently. And he will discuss with us how this strategy or answer some of these arguments in today's lecture. Perhaps the crucial question is formulated as what a kind of multicultural policy that we need to answer to manage the diverse communities in today's European societies. I don't want to take too much time, and I'd like to give the floor again to the Professor Tariq Modood. Welcome again.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. If you don't mind, I'll sit down, and I believe the plan is that I should speak for about an hour, and then we have a chance for discussion. As we go along, if I say something that is not clear, then I don't mind being interrupted. Put your hand up and I'll clarify, because there's no point carrying on if there's something you don't understand. But the discussion we'll save till the end. But I don't mind being interrupted. So, as Erkan said just now, so many politicians, I'm sure you're aware, have said that multiculturalism has failed or is in retreat or dead. And they've said it so many times. So, I've entitled this The Strange Non-Death, because surely it should be dead by now. Its death having been announced so many times. But I don't think it is. And I will try to explain why I think that's the case in the second half of the lecture. But in the first half of the lecture, I'm going to offer some account of what multiculturalism is. Because whether we believe it is alive or dead or prospering or dying, we at least ought to know what it is. And so what I do is I offer an analytical framework for understanding multiculturalism, understood as a politics and as a normative vision, but also in relation to the sociology implicit in multiculturalism. My analytical framework is in terms of integration. because I argue that multiculturalism is a mode of integration. So let's begin with integration. What do we mean by integration? So this is really what I want to say about that. Now, of course, most of the time when we talk about integration, we look at what I call the sectoral or legal aspects. By sectoral, I mean particular sectors of society, like housing, or education, or the labour market. Those kinds of things we talk about. When we talk about legal status, for instance, to do with acquisition of passports, legal rights, labour market, residential concentration, and whether a person has a sense of belonging partly depends on equality of opportunity in these sectors. But I want to argue that integration is incomplete without what I call macro-symbolic integration. So that's not just a legal status, and it's not to do with one particular sector. Every society has some conception of itself, and if you can't share that conception and be accepted by others, then you can't achieve a sense of belonging. And I have a quote at the bottom of this slide from Gerard Bouchard and Charles Taylor, who co-chaired a consultation in Quebec. Maybe you've heard of it. So this is a quote from them. "The symbolic framework of integration, identity, religion, perception of the other, collective memory, and so on, is no less important than its functional or material framework." And this is particularly relevant because I think the sense of crisis about multiculturalism and integration operates particularly at this level. That is what I call the macro-symbolic level. So if that's what integration is, what is it that's supposed to be integrated? Well, I have a kind of generic concept here, difference. And by this difference, I'm trying to catch something about people, obviously, which is not confined to the fact of migration or how long since migration, nor is it confined to economic relations. So difference here primarily refers to how people are identified. And this how people are identified has two aspects which we shouldn't lose sight of. How they identify themselves. For example, they may think of themselves as Chinese, fine. But the other aspect, how they're identified by others. Like others might say, oh, you are Chinese, they are Chinese, and so on. And the two may coincide. People who think they're Chinese are identified by others as Chinese, but they may not. Some people may think they are, let us say, Ghanaian, but other people just think of them as black or Africans. So how people are identified in these two aspects are not identical. And so integration is about integrating this difference. It is identifying a difference that is in some respect or other regarded as problematic, and integration means it ceases to be problematic. It doesn't disappear. The difference doesn't have to disappear in order to be integrated, but it ceases to be problematic. And I want to argue that there isn't one kind of integration. In fact, there are four, what I call modes of integration. And that's what I call them: assimilation, individualist integration, cosmopolitanism, and multiculturalism. And I want to spell out something about them. You know, what does it mean to call them a mode of integration, and how do they differ from each other, these four? And of course, notice that I include multiculturalism as a mode of integration. It's not a contrast to integration per se. It is a contrast to certain modes of integration, but not integration per se. Well, we might ask, integration into what? So here, I think most people agree that when we talk about integration, we mean integration into a national citizenship. So there's an assumption that some people are not sufficiently integrated into the national citizenship. And these can be different kinds of people, but I'm particularly interested in one kind of person or one kind of people. And that is people that I refer to as bearers of post-immigration difference. People who are marked out as being different, and it follows a process of migration. And the migration can be some time ago. It doesn't have to be 5 years ago. It can be 50 years ago. And groups can form as a result of migration. Groups obviously can migrate, but groups can also form as a result of migration. When I say form, new groups can come into being. Now, I hope you all recognize liberty, equality, and fraternity, or what we might nowadays call inclusivity or unity, as the standard triad of the French Revolution slogan. In fact, really, I would say these are the central concepts of democratic citizenship. But they're very complex ideas. There are many different interpretations. And they are actually the key ideas that we need to use in order to understand what integration is, and in order to distinguish between different modes of integration. Because different modes of integration are different interpretations of these three key democratic ideas. And so you could say that the key ideas behind multiculturalism and their critics are shared. Multiculturalists and non-multiculturalists or anti-multiculturalists aren't appealing to radically different concepts. They're appealing to different interpretations of the same concepts. So actually, they share a lot in common. Or so I want to try to show, that there are bases of argument